Checkout tracking by the NPD Group brings you a receipt collecting system that gathers data anonymously through technology we created, providing your businesses with answers.
We had to find a really powerful speaker to get people up and in the room at 10 a.m. Luckily, we found just the person for the job. He started out in the Disney Imagineering Group and then went on to Zynga and Shell Games. And now he is a designer at TinyCo. Please help me welcome to the stage, Rich Marmura.
That was probably the nicest introduction I've ever had. That makes me sound far more important than I actually am. As I was introduced, my name is Rich Marmura. I'm a game designer at TinyCo. This is me. This is Christmas when I was 5. I got my first computer, and that kind of set me down the path that I'm on now. I always like to say you can identify the nerds early. So since then, I've become an interactive designer. I've done games, toys, amusement park attractions. I've worked on things like Indiana Jones Adventure World, Farmville 2, and then a bunch of online browser-based MMOs for Disney. And so right now I'm with TinyCo. TinyCo is a 130-person game studio here in San Francisco. We focus on free-to-play mobile games. And I'm here to talk about mobile game events, specifically how we design them at TinyCo, tips for live management, and I'm going to pull a lot of examples from Family Guy, The Quest for Stuff, which is our big game right now. So for a little bit of background, Family Guy, The Quest for Stuff, it's based on the hit television series. It was released last year, April 2014. It's available on iOS, Android, and Windows Phone. So in The Quest for Stuff, players are rebuilding a destroyed quahog. You gather characters, the iconic places that you love from the show. You gather skins of the characters that you love from famous episodes, different looks of Peter, Lois, Brian, the whole gang. The town is expanded, the town is decorated, the town is customized. Throughout our events, in addition to our core game mechanics of expanding and customizing your quahog, we run events. So we run events around holidays, we run events around other IPs and things like that. And so we see events as limited time window featuring new and compelling content. So these could be anywhere from 1 to 6 weeks in length, pulling from game-related IP and other IPs. We see events as a fully fleshed out narrative arc. And we see events as an opportunity for every segment of the player population to become engaged in a way outside of the core mechanics. This event is not just designed for payers, it's designed for everyone. And events, so why should you care? Talking about this, so I'm hoping some of you care about this. Events are a great way to engage and in many cases re-engage with your player base. Events are an opportunity to reintroduce the world to your game. We've done numerous, and I'll get into them throughout the presentation, but we've done numerous events based on other IPs. Earlier this year, we did a Star Trek event, which we took the entire Quahog gang and put them and the entire cast of the Star Trek The Next Generation and some characters from Voyager and Deep Space Nine and the original series, all on the Enterprise. And it got a lot of press, and it got us a lot of attention, and it brought in players who have never tried our game before, and it brought back players who had lapsed in playing our game, and they found that they had loved what we did with it. And we also see events are also an opportunity to try new mechanics, to challenge your players and test ideas before you're integrating them into the full game. If I'm running for something for just a week, this is a great chance to do something quick and easy, see if people like it, and then adapt it. And it may be put into our core game, or we may put it into a future game that we're building. It's also, events are a great way to build a lot of player love. Again, Star Trek was one of our most beloved events by our players. Players asked if we could actually split it out into a separate app so they could just keep playing with what they had. And finally, events can be a huge boost for metrics across the board, of course, including monetization. So our events regularly put Quest for Stuff somewhere in the top 30 to top 20, and Star Trek specifically put us easily within the top 10 and then within the top 5. So that was really nice. So I'm going to talk a little bit about design pillars and the way I think about designing events. And then we'll talk a little bit more about live management. So the very first thing that I always tell people when you're designing an event is you want to be offering compelling content. So you want to be giving the players something that they don't have access to every day. Exciting characters, interesting locales, powerful rewards. If you're just giving players more of the same, why do they have a reason for wanting to be a part of what you're doing? And you have to be able to do this, though, you have to have a general, vague idea of what your players like, right? So we're fortunate. IP-wise, Family Guy is a really great thing to build events based on. Family Guy has a huge, deep multiverse of content, and it's a hugely referential show. It's constantly referencing pop culture, movies, television series, politics, everything. So it's really great to take all of those things that people love and bring them into the game. They fit naturally into what we're doing. And we're also fortunate that Fox and Fuzzy Door, who are our partners in producing the game, they're really pretty easy to work with, and they're actually really good collaborators. So we want to be giving them something great. So we're able to work with our external partners to bring celebrities and beloved IPs into our game. This content is exciting for our players, and it drives our engagement. So again, our events include exclusive deco, new currencies, characters, skins. So we've brought in people like Nathan Fillion, George Takei. And then in Star Trek, again, we brought in people, the characters themselves that were voiced by the actual actors. So in this case, Counselor Troy from Star Trek. But then we also do neat skins. So we did Ghostbusters for last year's Halloween, which was really a lot of fun for our community. And then we did Captain Pike Joe from Star Trek. So in addition to compelling content, we need to give something new. Not just content, but new gameplay as well. Compelling content is great, but modified gameplay makes an event feel like it's actually separate from the main game, which makes it feel important to engage with. If you're creating an event that's just the same exact gameplay as you have normally, why would players interact with it? Why would they care? So our events have successfully introduced concepts like boss battles, troop management, arcade shooters. And we've actually taken a lot of the things that we've integrated, created for events, and then integrated it back into the core game, because we found they've worked really well for engagement, for retention, for any number of metrics. So something new may also be just new ways that you present your gameplay. It doesn't have to be totally new mechanics. So a good example would be, initially we developed what we call event spaces. So whenever you're creating a customized town builder, players have this tendency to customize their town, and every town looks different, and every town is not optimally set up to run an event, right? So we've actually built event spaces which are separate from the player's play space that they actually cannot personally customize directly, but they can influence. So I'll give you an example. So this is an example of one of our event spaces. It's actually for our Peter Palooza event, which we're actually running today. Download it now and play. So as you move through the event, it's a whole concert space. So we have a main stage, we have a press area, we have merchandise booths, and each area of this event space actually serves as a hub for a mechanic. So it serves as a really nice separate area. So I can go to the concert stage and I engage with our main event mechanic, which is putting on concerts. So you're collecting skins for your favorite Cohagians, you're collecting your favorite rock stars and musical acts, Weird Al, Avril Lavigne, Alice Cooper, people like that, and you're bringing them on and you're putting them on stage and you're putting on concerts. And then each individual part of this, again, reinforces the different mechanics that we're trying to show throughout the event. And it works really well because it keeps it separate. The event district gets nicer throughout the weeks of the event, so the player has that sense of agency, they have that sense of engagement, but we don't have to worry about something being hidden behind a building or things being too spread out or players not being able to find things. We actually took this and we pushed it completely further with our Star Trek event. We created a secondary play space, and we created kind of this tiny tower Fallout shelter kind of mechanic where you're managing the Enterprise, rebuilding it, customizing your own Enterprise, and you're having your characters run it. It worked perfectly because it made Cohog and all of our core mechanics separate and kept our event mechanics within its own area. So also within design pillars, you're most likely going to be trying to sell something premium to your players. And the thing that I always try to tell people, and I try to make sure our team understands, is premium purchases should feel premium. So we sell currency shrines, we sell premium characters, we sell premium skins. But it's not enough to simply call something premium and sell it. Premium items must feel and act premium. You don't want the player to have buyer's remorse. A premium item has a specific look. It's above and beyond what is normal. Even without enhanced attributes, it would be awesome to look at. You would want to have this item just because it's so cool. So we have our dilithium mine from Star Trek. This animates, it blasts lasers, it looks so great on your play space. Never mind that it's giving you a massive amount of currency for the entire event. It just looks great. And the same thing goes with our cookie shrine from our Mafia event. It has conveyor belts, it feels very whimsical, it feels really good. There's pounding machines, and there's mixers, and there's all kinds of different lights. It feels really nice. But also, it's not enough also even just to look good. The function of a premium item is important. Premium items, in our case, always try to give the player a mechanical boost or advantage. So an example of this would be in Star Trek. We sold Lieutenant Worf. Not only is he a great, compelling character that I absolutely love, but then he was actually able to then battle our Borg squatters who stood on our space. Now, you could do this. You could battle the Borg completely free. We had other characters that did this, but by buying Worf, you have a mechanical advantage to being able to defeat more of them. So he felt like a good deal for players. Not only did he look good, not only did he do cool things, and not only was he just an awesome character that you want because you love Star Trek, but he helped you be better in the game. So we want to also be giving the player things to work towards constantly. And I'm not just talking long term, but within an hour, within a day, within a week, and then over the course of the event. We want to give clear goals and progressions in terms of content, in terms of mechanics, and in terms of the narrative. We want to understand where we're going with this event. Why are we doing these things? We want to understand what I'm working towards. Vagueness is not your friend here. There's a lot of people that will say, oh, well, you will get this wonderful surprise if you complete this event. That doesn't help you. Tell players what they're going to get. Show them the big, wonderful thing that they're going to get. You want that thing pulling people forward, pulling them throughout the event. But you want those wonderful things not just at the very end of the event, you want them throughout the event. I don't want to work on something for 5 weeks and only get one thing out of it. You need these wonderful things that are achievable in a play session. Again, in a day, 2 to 3 days, a week, over the course of the event. And finally, we want things challenging, but not impossible. Game designers and game devs have this tendency that I think a lot of us need to resist of making things overly difficult and overly hard to complete. Your content must be set to challenge and occasionally frustrate the player, but it has to be winnable. Players are your friends. Players are not your adversaries in this case. Even casually invested players, when playing an event, should walk away from an event with something great. Of course, the people that are investing, that are coming back to the game 5, 6 times a day throughout the course of 5 weeks should get the best stuff. But someone who's checking in once a day, once every 2 days, they should still leave feeling like they got something good out of it. If not, then you're really missing something cool for a big part of your player base. So once you have your event designed, you actually then have the live management section of it. So this is probably the most obvious thing that will ever be said at Casual Connect. Is there anyone out here who's running a game who's not at least looking at basic kinds of data? Okay. You want detailed data. It's pretty obvious. How are participation metrics? Are players progressing through the content? Are they progressing as expected? Are they getting through it faster? Are they all stuck way behind, much further than you expected? How are key monetization points performing? You need to have a good handle on this. But traditional data isn't your only source of information. You'll also want to be paying attention to forums, community support tickets, and other sources of feedback. I'm actually really surprised by how many designers and devs I encounter that spend absolutely no time looking at this information. People are telling you explicitly what they want and what they love and hate about your game, and people are ignoring it. Now, it takes some skill to be able to parse through information and understand, oh, this person's just angry in general and I'll never make them happy, or this person has a genuine concern, and this person has a genuine point that I should be listening to. It can be frustrating to look at some of these things, but I can't stress enough how important this is. This is something that's valuable. Take the time and do it. You want to look at all of the available information to understand how your players are experiencing your event. And if something is not working, you need to adapt quickly. You just can't let it stand. So here's some perhaps less obvious stuff. You should be playing your event. This is, again, something I'm really surprised that a lot of people aren't doing. Understand what you should be playing your event live like everyone else is. No cheating, no extra currency, nothing like that. You should be understanding what your players are playing, how it makes them feel, how it makes you feel, how it fits into your day, how it feels when you're touching it on the phone. Understand your player's perspective. Because if you're building something that makes you miserable, it's going to make your players miserable. And then that's going to make you miserable all over again. And of course, the final thing that I will always tell people is stay flexible within this. Like in any game design, get ready to change things. You never know what might happen, both in the game and outside of the game. In building Star Trek, we were about a week away from launch, and it was super sad. Leonard Nimoy passed away. He was key to our event. He was key to what we had been building. And now I in no way am claiming that the saddest part of Leonard Nimoy's death was the effect on Family Guy, The Quest for Stuff. But it affected what we did. And so we had to go back to the drawing board quickly. We had to adapt. And we ended up, in the end, working with the Nimoy Foundation, working in through a donation angle, through selling Spock and other things like that. And it actually worked out really well. And the players felt we actually did a nice tribute to Mr. Nimoy and to the character of Spock. But again, be ready for these things to happen, especially when you're working with IPs and you're working with IP holders and individuals like that, because these things are going to happen. After all, you've got to be flexible, because after all, as we all know in game development, it wouldn't be game development if things didn't change at the very last minute all the time. So let's review. A good event has compelling content. It has something new, premium purchases that feel truly, truly premium. And it has something that the player is working towards, not just over the course of the event, but it's working towards it on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and over the course of the event. We have a challenging but not impossible difficulty curve. We're building something that people actually want to play and engage with, not something that's only challenging the most hardcore people. We want to be monitoring our data from multiple sources, traditional sources of data from data analysts and product managers, but also talking with our community team. And we want to be playing our game live because we want to know how this feels and we want to know how our players feel. And above all, we're going to stay flexible as we're doing this, because if we can't do that, then we probably shouldn't be in game design. Questions?
Thank you, Rich. Please keep your hands up in the air so that we know where the microphone goes.
Hi, great talk. I noticed in late May, early June, there's a dip in top grossing. Is that a result of hangovers from events that you guys run, or can you talk about that?
That's a really good question. So it's a little bit of a combination of that. Yeah, I would mostly attribute it to a little bit of the, people tend to drain a lot of their clam wallets. So clams are a premium currency in the game. So we find a lot of people will drain clam wallets, especially at the end of an event, to get the last minute offers on, do you still want Worf? Do you still want 7 of 9? Do you still want Don Corleone? Things like that. And then afterwards there will be a lull for a little bit, and then things will usually pick up about, I don't know, a week to 2 weeks later. They'll go back to more of our normal cadence.
Thanks for the talk. Quick question about data. I was curious if you have any anecdotes from the live ops section of an event of just maybe an unintuitive data finding or a data finding that that you were able to, that was important to react to quickly, and how it improved the event as a result?
Sure. So a good example would have been, we were running our Star Trek event, and so one of the big things that you're doing throughout Star Trek is you're actually gathering dilithium. And if I realize I'm nerding out a lot in talking about Star Trek, but I feel like I'm kind of amongst brethren here that hopefully like Star Trek when I'm saying this stuff. So we were gathering a lot of these materials, and the dilithium actually fuels a lot of what you were doing throughout the event. And we were actually finding that players weren't progressing as quickly as we thought they should be. And this was like a huge concern, and we kept going through everything and figuring out why. And we ended up finding it was basically, there was a weird bug with how the system was calculating our dilithium expenditures, which was turning into event XP, which was then turning into gating people from progressing. And so we had to be making a lot of hot fixes throughout on our tuning to actually then bump people up to where they were going throughout the event. And so there were several times where players were finding themselves jumping ahead. But again, this was because we were monitoring the data so closely, not just the monetization, but the progression data, which was hugely important.
Do you rerun events?
So we don't right now. We'll reuse mechanics, and we will reintroduce skins and characters and different content, but we don't rerun events. We haven't hit that point yet. We try to make our events feel as unique as possible. For our smaller week-long events and 2-week-long events, we use more of a template system where we'll plug in content. That saves us a bit of time on the production, the UI, even just the tuning and balancing side of things. But whenever it comes to our massive 5-week events, we try to make those feel as unique as we can.
So how do you reintroduce the skins so that people who join your game later don't feel like they're forever behind?
Sure. So we'll do a lot of that. We do that through mystery boxes. We do that through sales. We did a best of 2014 sale at the beginning of this year. Even just whenever we're filling in space in between content, we'll do small releases. So we just recently released our Halloween content from 2014. And so again, it's great content because it's Ghostbusters and Freddy and Jason and Alien. Again, Family Guy is awesome to work on because anyone who loves 1980s pop culture, yeah, that's the stuff we get to pull from. So.
Do you mind if we have him just repeat the question so we get it on video?
Sure.
Yeah, Rich, we have a bit of more time for questions, and if they're not mic'd, would you repeat the questions, because this is for posterity, brother.
Sure.
I apologize. I had asked whether they repeated events and then followed up on how they reintroduced rewards from events.
Any other questions?
How much time do you have to beta test your events, and how many people do you usually do that with?
That's a really good question. I think the real answer is never enough time. In reality, the advantage that we have is because our events and the mechanics are released in kind of weekly tiers. So for example, if we look at the concert event that we're running right now, the main mechanic that we have live is crafting, and then we have a concert mechanic. We'll be introducing new mechanics throughout the weeks of the event, but players do not have access to them at this point. So we have our team, we have a QA team of about 8, and we try to get them on for about a week to a week and a half testing the feature hardcore. But they'll be, like I said, they'll be testing those smaller mechanics, and then once we're satisfied with that, we'll move on to the next week's mechanics. So the natural structure of our event system actually spreads everything out a bit more, preventing people from, preventing our QA team from having to test things 24 hours a day for a few weeks.
Last question.
Oh.
Have you ever had an issue with running a limited event that the players engage with it and they're having a lot of fun, but you're noticing that, say, your MTX run rates are impacted in a way that you weren't expecting negatively, where players are participating to the detriment of their normal spend behaviors?
So we've actually been pretty fortunate. Most of our events, at least our larger events, have all been pretty successful for us. We'll find the thing that we're very careful about as we design our event, which actually should probably be another pillar here, is our events are sure to not interrupt the core of the gameplay very much. So while we will release things into your main cohog and we'll adapt the board, we will we try to never prevent you from being able to gain progress in the main core game. We get complaints every once in a while that players will say, oh, well, I have so many things to do that I feel like I'm falling behind on the main game, and we try to encourage community-wise that, well, the core game will always be there, so events are limited time, so you can make a choice, but again, I think that's why separate event spaces and designing your events in a way that keep the mechanics as sectioned off, yet still part of the core game. Like it's really a balance, finding that balance between the two, and I think it's unique for each game. But for us, I think we found that nice balance.
Okay, see, I don't think I oversold that talk at all. That was excellent, Rich.
Thank you.
And your slides were so good that we've decided to change the badges to feature your slides. So it's amazing that we did that immediately.
Thank you.
Everybody give a big round of applause for TinyCo's Rich Marmura.